I stared at the news camera, my hands trembling, as I held up the photographs that would destroy Patricia's career and potentially save hundreds of lives. My manager fired me for having a poor attitude, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. But my attitude was refusing to help her cover up fraud that could kill families, just like it killed my brother. My name is Marcus Thompson. I'm 34 years old, and I've been working construction for 8 years now. Most people think construction workers are just guys who show up, swing hammers, and cash paychecks. They're wrong. Dead wrong. I'm a project coordinator at Meridian Construction Solutions, which means I'm the guy who makes sure everything actually works the way it's supposed to. The blueprints, the materials, the safety specs, all of it has to match up perfectly. One mistake can kill people. Trust me, I know this better than anyone. 5 years ago, my brother David died when the West Side Apartments collapsed. 27 years old, just got engaged, had his whole life ahead of him. The building came down like a house of cards because some contractor decided to save a few bucks on steel beams. 3 families lost someone that day. Dozens got hurt. The contractors, they paid some fines and moved on with their lives. And that's when I learned something important. Details matter. Every bolt, every beam, every single specification exists for a reason. People's lives depend on guys like me actually giving a damn. Which brings me to that Tuesday morning in March when everything started to unravel. I pulled up to the Riverside Family Complex construction site at 7:30, same as always. Coffee in hand, clipboard ready. Another day of making sure 200 families would have safe homes. The morning air was crisp, and the crew was already unloading steel beams from a delivery truck. Something looked off immediately. The beams seemed thinner than they should be. Different somehow. I've been doing this long enough to spot quality materials from across a job site, and these didn't look right. My stomach dropped the same way it did 5 years ago when I got that phone call about David. I walked over to inspect the delivery. The paperwork looked perfect. Premium grade A steel beams. $50,000 worth, exactly what the specs called for. But the actual beams sitting on that truck? No way these were grade A. They looked more like grade C material, the cheap stuff you might use for a storage shed, not a building where families would live. I started taking pictures with my phone. Became a habit after David died. Document everything. Trust nothing. Verify twice. The delivery driver gave me a weird look, but I didn't care. I photographed the beams, the paperwork, the truck license plate, everything. Then I needed to talk to Patricia. Patricia Hendricks runs this project, and she's good at what she does. 12 years with the company, reputation for bringing jobs in under budget and ahead of schedule. She's the kind of manager who remembers your birthday and asks about your kids. Everyone likes Patricia. I found her in the site trailer, reviewing blueprints with her morning coffee. When I mentioned the beam issue, she barely looked up from her papers. "Marcus, you worry too much," she said, with that easy smile of hers. "Trust me. I've been doing this since before you got out of college. But here's the thing about us, it has to be earned." And something about her dismissive tone bothered me. David's building collapse started with someone saying, "Don't worry about it," too. Over the next few weeks, I kept watching. The concrete mix seemed watered down. The electrical wiring wasn't the gauge specified in the plans. Even the insulation looked like bargain basement stuff. Each time I brought concerns to Patricia, she got a little more defensive. "Are you questioning my professional judgment?" she asked during one particularly tense conversation. The weird part is, I was starting to realize this wasn't incompetence. This was systematic. Someone was ordering cheap materials and billing for expensive ones. Someone was deliberately cutting corners that could get people killed. And Patricia? She was starting to act less like a manager with nothing to hide and more like someone with everything to lose. Then came the day Patricia called me into her office with a stack of papers that would change everything. "I need you to sign off on these delivery receipts," she said, sliding them across her desk like they were routine paperwork. Her tone was casual, almost friendly, like she was asking me to initial a lunch order. I flipped through the stack. Every single receipt was a lie. Premium steel beams that never arrived, high-grade concrete that was actually bargain mix, top-shelf electrical wire that looked more like extension cord material. The paperwork claimed we'd received $50,000 worth of quality materials. Reality, maybe $20,000 in cheap garbage that wouldn't pass inspection at a storage unit. "I can't sign these, Patricia." My voice was steady, but my heart was hammering. "They're not accurate." Her friendly smile vanished like someone flipped a switch. "Marcus, and I'm gonna need you to be a team player here." Team player. Right, because apparently fraud was a team sport now. Patricia leaned back in her chair and launched into what she probably thought was a reasonable explanation. Clients expect miracles on impossible budgets. Construction costs keep rising. Competition is brutal. Everyone cuts corners to stay competitive. "How do you think we keep winning contracts?" she asked. "By being honest about what things actually cost?" The scary part? She genuinely seemed to believe this was normal business practice, like everyone was running the same scam, so it wasn't really a scam at all. But here's what Patricia didn't understand. I wasn't thinking about business practices or competitive advantages. I was thinking about David lying in that hospital bed, crushed by debris from a building that collapsed because someone else decided to be a team player. "I won't sign false documents," I told her. "These buildings aren't safe." Patricia's expression shifted from friendly persuasion to something much colder. She started talking about my future with the company, my mortgage payments, my girlfriend Sarah, and our plans to get married next year. "You've got a good thing here, Marcus. Don't throw it away over paperwork." Paperwork. She called safety specifications paperwork. That night, I sat in my truck for an hour before going home. Sarah knew something was wrong the moment I walked through the door. I told her everything about the fake receipts, Patricia's threats, the whole mess. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Good question. The smart career move was obvious. Sign the papers, keep my head down, collect my paycheck. Patricia had made it clear those were my only options if I wanted to stay employed. But David's face kept flashing in my memory, along with the faces of all the families who would eventually live in these buildings. Kids playing in apartments with electrical systems that could spark fires. Parents sleeping in bedrooms with walls that might collapse in a strong wind. I made a decision that probably saved my sanity and definitely destroyed my comfort zone. I started secretly documenting everything. Every suspicious delivery got photographed from multiple angles. I made copies of real material specifications and compared them to what actually arrived on site. When legally possible, I recorded conversations where Patricia or her crew discussed the modifications to our supply chain. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. This wasn't just one project. Patricia had been running the same scam for 3 years across multiple job sites. Hundreds of families were living in buildings constructed with substandard materials. The math was staggering. She'd probably skimmed millions in billing fraud while creating dozens of potential death traps. And she wasn't working alone. Tom Bradley in supply management was approving all the cheap material orders. Jake Martinez, the foreman, knew exactly what was happening, but kept his mouth shut. Even some city inspectors seemed suspiciously willing to overlook obvious problems. I felt like I was discovering a conspiracy, except it was hiding in plain sight. Everyone involved just treated it like business as usual. Meanwhile, Patricia made my life absolutely miserable. She assigned me impossible deadlines, then wrote me up when I couldn't meet them, excluded me from essential planning meetings, then criticized me for being out of the loop. spread rumors about my difficult attitude to other managers. Classic workplace warfare. Build a paper trail showing the troublemaker is incompetent and unprofessional. Then fire him for poor performance. The paranoia was eating me alive. Every conversation felt like a trap. Every email might be twisted into evidence of insubordination. I started second guessing every interaction, wondering who else was part of Patricia's network and who might actually be trustworthy. Sarah watched me turn into someone she barely recognized. Anxious, suspicious, constantly checking my phone for more evidence of fraud, but she never once suggested I should just sign those papers and move on. "You know what's right," she told me one evening after I'd spent 3 hours organizing my documentation. "David would be proud of what you're doing." Then came the meeting I'd been expecting for weeks. Patricia walked me into HR with Janet Morrison, the HR director. They had a thick folder with my name on it, documenting months of unprofessional conduct, missed deadlines that had been impossible from the start, conflicts with team members who were actually co-conspirators in fraud, negative attitude affecting workplace morale because I insisted on following safety protocols. "We're terminating your employment effective immediately," Janet said in that neutral HR voice they teach in management seminars. Poor performance and unprofessional behavior. I cleaned out my desk while a security guard watched, walked to my truck carrying a cardboard box of personal items like some cliché from a bad movie, sat in the parking lot staring at my phone, which contained enough evidence to destroy careers and potentially save lives. The smart move was still obvious. Go home, find another job, forget this ever happened. Patricia had won. I was unemployed with a termination on my record that would make finding new work complicated. But sitting in that parking lot, I realized something important. Getting fired was actually liberating. No more pretending to be a team player, no more walking on eggshells around people who were willing to risk lives for profit. I called Sarah first, told her what happened, asked if she could handle what I was about to do next. Then I scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in 5 years. Lisa Chen, investigative reporter for Channel 7 News. She'd covered David's building collapse and actually seemed to care about getting the story right. Time to find out if anyone else gave a damn about construction fraud that could kill families. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Lisa Chen remembered me. That surprised me more than it should have. "Marcus Thompson," she said, before I could even introduce myself. "David's brother. I covered the West Side collapse." 5 years later, and she still had the details locked in her memory. That told me something important about the kind of reporter she was, the kind who actually cared about the people behind the stories. We met at a coffee shop downtown 2 days later. I brought everything: photos, documents, recordings, material specifications, spread it all across a corner table like I was planning a military operation. Lisa's eyes went wide as she flipped through the evidence. "How long has this been going on?" she asked, studying a photo comparing the cheap steel beams to the premium specifications. "At least 3 years that I can prove. Probably longer." She pulled out a notebook and started asking the kind of questions that made me realize I wasn't dealing with some amateur. How many projects? Which buildings? How many families affected? What's the potential financial damage? The numbers were staggering when you laid them out like that. Hundreds of families living in compromised buildings, millions in billing fraud, multiple city inspectors who somehow missed obvious safety violations. "This is big, Marcus, really big." Lisa leaned back in her chair, processing the scope. "But you understand what you're risking here? Patricia's going to come after you hard. Her lawyers, the company's lawyers, probably some people you haven't even thought of yet." Did I understand? Hell no. I was a construction coordinator, not some whistleblower expert. but I understood something else. David died because someone stayed quiet when they should have spoken up. I wasn't making that mistake twice. The news story broke on a Wednesday evening during prime time. Lisa had spent weeks verifying everything, interviewing experts, tracking down additional sources. Channel 7 promoted it like the scandal it was. Construction company accused of massive safety fraud. Sitting in that studio under those hot lights, holding up photographs that showed the difference between what families paid for and what they actually got. I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. My voice stayed steady as I explained how the scheme worked. Premium materials ordered and billed, cheap garbage actually delivered and installed. Safety specifications ignored to boost profit margins. Families trusting their homes were built to code while living in potential death traps. My manager fired me for having a poor attitude, I told Lisa on camera. But my attitude was refusing to help her cover up fraud that could kill families just like it killed my brother. The story exploded overnight. Channel 7's phones started ringing before the broadcast even ended. Other families with concerns about their buildings, former employees ready to talk, city officials suddenly very interested in reviewing inspection records. Social media picked it up next. Within hours, the story was trending locally, then regionally. Construction workers from other companies started sharing their own horror stories. Turns out, Patricia's approach to cost management wasn't as unique as she thought. The FBI opened an investigation on Friday. Patricia was suspended Monday morning. By Wednesday, she was arrested on federal fraud charges. Tom Bradley and Jake Martinez got hauled in too. Even some of those city inspectors found themselves answering uncomfortable questions about their inspection procedures. The legal machinery moved faster than I expected. Grand jury hearings, federal prosecutors building cases, multiple buildings condemned, and residents relocated at Meridian's expense. My phone rang constantly. Death threats from people who thought I was destroying honest businesses. Thank you messages from families grateful someone finally spoke up. Job offers from construction companies that wanted to hire someone with proven integrity. The money situation got tight fast. Unemployment benefits don't stretch far when you're fighting corporate lawyers. But Sarah stood by me through all of it, even when I spent entire nights organizing evidence for prosecutors instead of job hunting. 6 months later, I testified before the grand jury that indicted Patricia and her crew. Standing outside that courthouse afterward, I finally visited David's grave, told him about Patricia's arrest, about the families who were safe now because someone had spoken up. The construction industry needed people willing to do the right thing, even when it cost everything. Especially then. A year later, I'm standing on the construction site where they tore down one of Patricia's buildings. The old apartments are gone, replaced by properly built housing with real grade A steel beams and electrical systems that won't burn families alive in their sleep. Kids are running around the courtyard while their parents unpack moving trucks. Normal families doing normal things, completely unaware they're alive because some guy decided paperwork mattered more than keeping his job. Patricia got 8 years in federal prison. Tom Bradley got 5. Jake Martinez flipped early and testified against everyone, so he only got probation. Those city inspectors? Turns out accepting cash to overlook safety violations is also illegal. Who knew? The FBI's investigation expanded beyond Meridian. Apparently, construction fraud is like cockroaches. Find one, there's always more hiding in the walls. Dozens of companies got raided. Hundreds of buildings got inspected. Some had to be condemned, but that's better than waiting for them to collapse with people inside. I never got my old job back. Didn't want it anyway. These days, I work for Safe Bill Consulting, helping cities spot exactly the kind of fraud Patricia was running. Turns out there's decent money in having actual integrity. Sarah finds this hilarious, since I spent months convinced doing the right thing meant financial ruin. We got married last month. Small ceremony, just family and friends. Lisa Chen came, which was weird, but nice. She's still covering construction safety stories, still remembering names and faces years later. The death threats stopped after Patricia's sentencing. Amazing how brave people get when they're anonymous, how quickly they disappear when the FBI starts tracking phone numbers. Some nights I still think about those families living in Patricia's buildings before we caught her. Parents putting kids to bed in rooms with walls that could collapse. People cooking dinner with electrical systems that were basically fire hazards waiting to happen. But mostly I think about David, about how his death taught me that details matter, that specifications exist for reasons written in other people's blood. Standing at his grave last week, I realized something. Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because unemployment is fun, it's not, but because staying quiet would have killed me slowly, one falsified inspection report at a time. David would have spoken up. He was always braver than me anyway. Now, families sleep safely in buildings that won't collapse because someone finally decided construction fraud wasn't just paperwork. It was justice.